Before we dive into the story, imagine this. Within the first 2 minutes of a typical educational live stream, viewer retention often dips by nearly 30%. By the 5-minute mark, only about half of curious newcomers remain engaged. Now picture a 9-year-old outshining seasoned academics and reclaiming attention. That's the spark that ignites chapter 1 of our tale. In the crowded lecture hall, Professor Harrison presents the Carmichael conjecture as an insurmountable challenge. He notes that over the last century, more than 1,000 attempts have failed, and current computational models yield success rates under 0.1%. As he wraps up, the audience's applause sits at a polite 78% approval on the livestream poll, but beneath the surface, skepticism simmers. Meanwhile, in a modest elementary school classroom, 9-year-old Amir Wright races through grade-level worksheets in under 3 minutes, 75% faster than his peers, before turning to problems designed for university undergraduates. His teacher, Ms. Carter, quietly tracks his progress on a spreadsheet, noting an average accuracy of 98% on advanced problems compared to the class average of 62%. When she submits his name for the livestream Q&A, the odds of her request being accepted were just 5%, yet the moderators approve it in under 10 seconds, an anomaly that hints at a narrative shift. As the live video feed flickers to Cambridge, view counts climb from 12,000 to 18,500 in 30 seconds, a 54% spike indicating heightened interest. Amir's question, typed into the chat as "Can spatial mapping resolve quantum variables?" registers 1,200 upvotes in under a minute, a level of engagement rivaling top tech keynotes. When the feed abruptly cuts with technical difficulties, average watch time plummets by 40%, but the classroom's roar of disbelief captures a different metric: raw emotional investment. A spontaneous decision follows. Ms. Carter and Amir, supported by his grandmother June, drive 250 miles to Cambridge. Their journey, captured by a single phone clip, receives 3,400 shares within hours. At Harvard's ornate reception, security holds firm, yet Dr. Elena Morales, whose department typically sees just 8% outreach diversity, intervenes and grants them access. Inside, Amir's repeated use of topological transformation and rotational symmetry lands with uncanny precision. His diagram on the whiteboard draws a crowd 5 rows deep. Data quietly logged by the department's AV system shows onlookers leaning forward 68% more when he writes, compared to any professor earlier in the day. As Amir explains how visualizing prime distributions in 3 dimensions dissolves the paradox Professor Harrison deemed unsolvable, dozens of senior scholars huddle, exchanging whispered calculations. Their collective nods push agreement to 83% among those present, a stark contrast to the initial 0% support for a child's hypothesis. Harrison's face, flush with disbelief, underscores the tension between established authority and fresh insight. Watching this unfold, I'm struck by the power of genuine curiosity combined with unwavering confidence. Quantitatively, the numbers tell a story of disruption. Viewer retention rebounds from its nadir, classroom engagement soars, and academic approval rates shift dramatically in Amir's favor. Yet beyond the metrics, this chapter reveals something deeper. True innovation often arrives from unexpected sources, and rigid systems can't contain a mind that sees differently. After every retelling, I feel a surge of optimism tempered by frustration. Optimism because Amir's journey reminds us that talent transcends environment. Frustration because so many gifted children never get their chance. For me, this chapter serves as both a blueprint and a warning. If we don't build pathways for young minds like Amir's, we risk losing breakthroughs that benefit us all. As the opening act closes, I'm left wondering, how many solutions lie hidden in underfunded classrooms, waiting for a moment in the spotlight? Chapter 1 challenges us to listen first and judge later, and in doing so, it redefines what impossible really means. Before we turn the page on Amir's extraordinary debut, consider this. Within 24 hours of that Cambridge reception, social media algorithms propelled clips of his whiteboard demonstration to 1.2 million views, a 650% increase over Harvard's typical event reach. Classroom polls in dozens of schools streamed live showed a 42% uplift in student enthusiasm for STEM topics, proof that a single spark can ignite nationwide curiosity. Now in Chapter 2, we follow Amir as he navigates the immediate fallout of his challenge to the academic establishment. When Amir and Ms. Carter returned to East Boston early the next morning, the school corridors buzzed with a fever that no exam season had ever produced. Enrollment inquiries spiked by nearly 30% on the district website, and local news crews prolonged their stay, converting an ordinary bulletin board into a backdrop for interviews. Principal Grant, who had once dismissed Amir's potential, now faced a surge of parent emails, 1,034 by lunchtime, demanding advanced math programs. His staff attendance, typically hovering around 88%, climbed to 96% as teachers volunteered for after-school enrichment sessions. In this whirlwind, Amir slipped quietly through the halls, clutching his notebooks, uncertain whether he'd become an inspiration or a spectacle. At home, Grandma June's phone never stopped ringing. By late afternoon, dozens of universities, 50 and counting, had extended offers for summer workshops and online mentorship. The family's modest living room, normally a sanctuary of puzzles and laughter, transformed into a command center. Laptops open, spreadsheets tracking scholarship deadlines, and voicemail messages flooding in at a rate of 2 per minute. June, who had worked as a legal secretary before retirement, methodically logged each opportunity, her protective instinct steering them toward programs that valued originality over prestige. Meanwhile, Amir reviewed newspaper clippings with the same careful eye he used for equations, noting patterns in the language. Child prodigy, race against prejudice, underdog triumph. The media's fascination felt like a double-edged sword, elevating his achievements, yet reducing complex ideas into catchy headlines. Quantitatively, the numbers told a clear story. Local library checkouts of mathematics titles for ages 8 to 12 soared by 120%. Online searches for topological visualization tripled. Even standardized test scores, in schools unrelated to Amir's outreach, showed a modest 5% uptick in math problem-solving sections that week. But behind these figures lay the real question. Could this momentum translate into enduring opportunity, or would it fizzle as the novelty wore off? By Friday, invitations arrived from 2 major research institutions offering to fund Amir's independent study. Yet as suits and formal letters arrived, a more insidious challenge emerged: skepticism from the academy's traditional gatekeepers. Dr. Harrison, his public reputation rattled, published a statement emphasizing the necessity of rigorous peer review, a subtle rebuke implying that a child's work, however impressive, required validation by credentialed experts. His op-ed in a leading journal noted that, while outreach programs foster interest, they should not supplant established methodologies. Behind the veneer of caution lay an attempt to reassert intellectual authority. 0.02% of Harrison's colleagues explicitly defended him in online forums, while an undercurrent of doubt about whether Amir's insight was entirely his own gained traction, accounting for 12% of social media comments tagging him. Amir felt the tension keenly when he arrived at the public library to prepare for a weekend live stream, Q&A organized by the National Science Consortium. The usual librarian's nods of recognition gave way to curious stares. A queue formed at the reference desk, not for books but for Amir himself, requests for selfies, autograph slips, even an invitation to guest teach a middle school class. Security at the library reported a 400% hike in foot traffic that Saturday morning. Amid the whirlwind, Amir found refuge in the quiet aisles, translating the Carmichael framework into a series of interactive diagrams he could share online, hoping this would shift attention back to the mathematics rather than the spectacle. That evening's live stream reached 85,000 concurrent viewers, 10 times the average for similar events. Ms. Carter tracked engagement metrics in real time. 72% of chat participants asked technical questions. Only 8% commented on Amir's age or appearance. For the first time, the focus felt balanced between how and who. Yet in the chat's margins, a few skeptics demanded proof of Amir's originality. Who taught him this? Show us his early notes. Undeterred, Amir displayed his earliest jottings, crude sketches from the classroom margins, documenting the evolution of his spatial approach. Viewers responded with a surge of support, upvoting his explanation 9,000 times within an hour. Despite the public acclaim, the path forward remained fraught. University administrators called for closed-door meetings to discuss intellectual property frameworks and potential co-authorship agreements. Some proposed requiring Amir to sign non-disclosure clauses before sharing new findings. Grandma June, reviewing these contracts, flagged clauses that would grant institutions a 50% stake in any commercialization. She refused, insisting that any agreement honor Amir's sole authorship. Their cautious stance delayed formal partnerships, but kept control of Amir's work where it belonged. By midweek, a consortium of 10 minority-focused scientific organizations had rallied behind Amir, issuing a public statement condemning attempts to co-opt his discovery without proper recognition. Their letter, co-signed by 200 researchers, argued that systemic bias too often silences non-traditional voices. In response, Dr. Harrison issued a brief apology, acknowledging he may have underestimated the reach of fresh perspectives. A calculated move that reclaimed 15% of the support he'd lost, but did little to repair the broader credibility gap. Through it all, Amir continued his routine. Classroom lessons by day, online workshops in the evenings, and long walks with Grandma June when the noise became overwhelming. He measured progress not by headlines, but by the satisfaction of each incremental breakthrough. Like the moment his three-dimensional matrix model predicted a new set of prime-related patterns with 95% accuracy under simulated conditions. Those simulations, run on cloud-based quantum emulators kindly provided by a tech startup, generated data packets that Amir analyzed in Python scripts he taught himself to write. His personal log showed that he'd iterated the model 47 times in the past week, refining parameters until error margins dipped below 0.05%. These technical milestones grounded him when public opinion swayed like tides. By the end of Chapter 2, the initial euphoria had given way to a sobering realization. Brilliance alone wasn't enough. Navigating institutional politics and maintaining creative autonomy would demand vigilance. Success metrics, media coverage, viral clips, tweet impressions could amplify his message, but they could also obscure the substance of his work. As he closed his notebook that Saturday night, Amir knew the real test lay ahead, ensuring that his discovery would be developed ethically, with transparency, and for the benefit of all, not buried behind academic gatekeeping or bureaucratic red tape. Reflecting on Amir's journey so far, I'm struck by how quickly enthusiasm can morph into precarious hype. Quantitative surges in engagement and institutional outreach demonstrate the power of a single moment, but the qualitative struggle, protecting authorship, resisting exploitation, reveals the true complexity of translating raw talent into lasting impact. For every metric that soared, an equally urgent challenge emerged. Yet through collaboration with allies who respected his vision, Ms. Carter, Grandma June, the Minority Scientist Consortium, Amir is carving a path where his ideas remain his own. When dawn broke on the morning of the final negotiation, the skyline of Boston felt electric, as if the entire city held its breath for the outcome of Amir's journey. In the softly lit conference room of the National Science Consortium, the dozen representatives from government, academia, and civil rights organizations gathered. At the center sat Amir, now wearing a crisp blazer 2 sizes too large, his grandmother June beside him, her eyes brimming with proud tears. Across from them, Dr. Benjamin Harrison hovered uncomfortably, his earlier condescension replaced by guarded curiosity. Dr. Elena Morales, Amir's steadfast champion, opened the meeting by recounting the quantitative impact of his work: a 42% rise in nationwide STEM engagement, a 95% reduction in simulated error rates, and thousands of students already enrolled in mentoring programs inspired by his story. The numbers underscored what everyone felt in their hearts. This was more than an academic breakthrough. It was a call for a fairer, more inclusive future. As the final clauses of the agreement took shape, guaranteeing Amir sole credit for his methods, full funding for his humanitarian research, and an endowed scholarship fund for underserved students, Amir listened intently. When asked to voice his own terms, he looked each delegate in the eye. I want my grandmother's medical bills covered indefinitely, he began, his voice steady despite his youth. And I want every agreement we sign to include a clause that ensures my work remains open source for any scientist dedicated to saving lives. A hush fell. These conditions weren't just protective, they were a blueprint for generosity. In that moment, you could feel a collective swell of emotion, outrage at the obstacles he'd faced, gratitude for his empathy, and an overwhelming joy that this child's brilliance would transform lives beyond his own circle. By afternoon, the ink was dry. Handshakes were exchanged, photographs taken, each smile authentic, each glance at Amir, a gesture of respect rather than pity. Outside the building, a crowd of supporters, students, parents, teachers, cheered as Amir and June emerged. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment, a 9-year-old prodigy whose insistence on integrity had upended entrenched systems. Cameras caught June clutching Amir's hand, her voice cracking as she told the world, "He taught me what courage looks like." That evening, at a modest banquet hosted by the consortium, Amir took the podium. Lights dimmed, a single spotlight centered on him. He began not with jargon, but with gratitude. "Thank you to everyone who believed in a kid from East Boston." The audience erupted. He spoke of his grandmother's sacrifices, Ms. Carter's tireless support, Dr. Morales' protective advocacy, and yes, even of the lessons learned from those who had doubted him. But then he closed with a promise. "I'll spend my life making sure the next generation has every tool they need, and no one can ever tell them they don't belong." As he stepped down, the room rose as one, applauding until the walls echoed. That night, when the celebrations had wound down, Amir and June returned to their apartment. The space, once cluttered with bills and voicemails, now held stacks of letters from aspiring young mathematicians and engineers. Amir sank onto the couch beside June, who handed him a steaming mug of cocoa. He looked at her and said simply, "We did it." She hugged him tight, whispering, "You did it." In that embrace, the story's true victory revealed itself. This wasn't just about solving a century-old mathematical puzzle, but about affirming that every child, regardless of background, deserves a chance to shine. Watching from afar, I felt my own eyes fill with emotion. There is incomparable joy in witnessing injustice overturned, in seeing a community rally around someone so young and vulnerable. And there is righteous anger in remembering how easily brilliance can be dismissed when it comes from unexpected places. Amir's triumph is a testament to resilience, to the power of allies, and to the unbreakable bond between a grandmother and her grandson. As the credits roll on this chapter, I hope you're moved to believe in the potential within every overlooked corner of our world, and to stand up whenever someone tells you or someone you care about that you can't. Because if a 9-year-old from East Boston can rewrite the rules, imagine what the rest of us can do when we refuse to accept impossible.